There we go. So welcome to Centering Justice, everyone. I wanted to share with you that as I was anticipating this session today, I just felt so much joy and excitement running through my whole body. And I wanted to share that with you, especially for those of you who are joining us for the first time, as just a little hint as to what this space is and what it will hopefully be like for you today. And with that, I also wanted to share just on behalf of NEW that we have really been asking about centering justice. What is this series becoming? What do we envision for this series? And this session today, Visioning for Transformation, to me really captures our vision also for centering justice, which is really for this to be a space to nurture new ways of being and looking at the world, and to really invite leaders of color in our community to share their deep wisdom and stories and experience in shaping that that new way of imagining the future together. And when we, in our most recent conversation, we're asking this question of what do we imagine for centering justice, at the very end of that conversation, Yodit offered a really beautiful question that I would like to share with you all today, if that's okay, Yodit. Is that okay? So this is an invitation. It's an invitation for our speakers and for each of you here today. What if there were a conversation where you could be fully who you are while experiencing the fullness of others, their identities, experiences, imaginations, longing, hopes, aspirations, and together you'd remake the world, deepening consciousness, planting roots, growing branches, blooming leaves of liberation, love, and justice. So we really invite you to be present in your whole bodies and in that spirit with us today. And we're really excited to hear from Dr. Naimah Wade, Ana Gomulka, and Dr. Kimberly Hurns. And as a special little addition to this first session of the year, we're actually going to invite you all to participate in a really powerful community visioning exercise at the very end of our session today. So if you're able to stay on till 1:30, we hope you can be a part of that. And with that, I will turn things over to Yodit to lead us into this session today.
Thank you, Ananya. I heard somebody comment on how you make them feel when you come into space. I think they said every time they hear your voice. I feel the same way. Just love to hear your voice. Thank you for opening us up. And Happy New Year, y'all, even though, hell, 2021. Listen, I am aware that every day, especially if you are Black or brown body, and especially the last 12 months, something has tried to kill us and failed. It doesn't fall lightly on me that together we are simultaneously and actively hospicing white supremacy, dominance, extraction, hate, oppression, marginalization, while we are midwifing the new world that we want. I remember when I was in labor with my baby, and I swear I told them, just put them back in there, let them stay. This is hard. 36 hours of labor. Ooh, down in my hips, that back. You know, you start off with a plan. I'm gonna go natural. We just gonna bring the baby, honey. That 18 hours kicks in. They could have gave me heroin. It was so much. But y'all get the point. It was painful. It was hard. It was really hard to be in that labor. But boy, oh boy, did joy rise in the morning. When at 12:19, that precious baby boy of mine was born, 12:19 in the morning. And in that moment, the promise of new life and possibility overwhelmed my senses. Nursing him healed my womb, and raising him gives me hope daily. You can probably hear my dog and you can hear him on Zoom, but I love it. I love to hear the sounds of his presence, his humanity. And this year, trying to lead through COVID, who knew what to do? I didn't know what to do, but I knew to lean on my indigenous wisdom, my mama instincts to care for people. I thought, what would a mama do? A mama would love on people, center them, hold them precious. I also knew that part of how oppression works is to rob us of those aspirations, those dreams, those visions. That's what we're going to do today, y'all. We reclaiming our time and our space. We are practicing, actively practicing resistance today, 1 week from an insurgent white supremacist attack on our nation's capital. And we are together, the architects. We don't have the blueprint, but we right now today, and in the reverberations of those we're connected to, we're architects of the future we want. It has not been birthed yet. We don't have the blueprint, but we are building it and we're transforming the future together. So I'm so delighted to turn things back over to Ananya to hear from my girl, Kim Hurns, Naimah Wade, Ana. These folks are going to, I think, delight your senses, get you thinking, be real, keep it 100 with us. And then we're going to create a vision together, you all. That's our resistance. You hear me? We're going to do that later. So Ananya, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Yodit. So as you just invited, we really want to invite each of you, Ana, Naimah, and Kimberly, to bring your whole selves into this space. So in that spirit, we want to begin by asking you what communities and identities you're drawing upon as you enter this conversation. And we'll begin with Ana.
Thank you, Ananya and Yodit, for opening this space up and holding it for us all to be here. My name is Ana Gomulka. I'm from the Ypsilanti and Detroit area. I was born and raised in Michigan. I'm a biracial Black woman. I have a Black mother and a white father. So I draw on those experiences, the experiences of my mothers before me, who have really led the fight for me to be able to be who I am and where I am today. But additionally, the artistic community around us, because I feel like artists and creators are the curators of our cultural experiences as Americans, but also as individuals. And as a creator, I'm a musician and an artist. So I really draw on all of those things today. And
I hope you're not hidden.
and bring those into the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ana. Naimah, would you like to share the communities and identities you're drawing upon?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Such an honor to be a part of this conversation. Thank you to Yodit and to the Centering Justice team for extending the invitation. My name is Naimah Wade again. I am coming to you drawing from I like to say I'm drawing from generations of women who rise, women who face tragedy and challenges and still prevail. I'm also bringing other aspects of my identity to today's conversation that include that of being a spiritual Black woman who doesn't know all of the connections and all of the lineage that got me here, but is surely in search of it for sure. A mother of 2 girls, brilliant, beautiful brown girls, and I am working with my husband to raise into full-hearted citizens, and a learning scientist who really enjoys understanding instructional design and the things that cause learning environments to be effective, a researcher, a nonprofit leader, and also a Detroiter. And I say a Detroiter, but I also often let people know that I was made in Chicago and raised in Detroit. And so I bring a little bit of that flair and maybe say some words that don't sound like Detroit words, because part of that Chicago root is still there. So it is my pleasure to be here with you all today and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Naimah. Yeah, go ahead, Kimberly.
Thank you all for having us today. And I'm going to start off where Naimah left off. And I am an 80s baby from Detroit, born and raised. And I say that because I had a person ask me one time, you know, what is something that you feel like in your life experience that really, really, really molded you? And it's been born and raised in Detroit in the 80s specifically, where, you know, people look like me who ran the city, and people look like me on TV and every place else and everything in between. And the 80s part I think is important too, because it was, I'm a child of hip hop, you know, and I think that was, that's a movement of resistance, and, you know, something that we built and we created and others didn't see. And that means a lot to me. But I'm a wife, and the most important relationship I have in my life is my husband. And I love saying that because I think it breaks down stereotypes. I'm a mother of 2 beautiful daughters that bring unique challenges, and a son who is the youngest. And that's another challenge. I'm an African-American woman, and I'm a first-generation college student. And that's important to me because I get to do for kids every day what wasn't done always for me. I'm loud, I'm passionate, and I code switch a lot all day long. And it makes me laugh. And I'm continuously grateful. And I'm grateful to be here and to share with this beautiful panel and all you wonderful people.
Thank you, Kimberly. And we are so honored to have each of you here in that fullness. So we're going to shift into the core conversation for today, and I'll actually invite you to just riff off of each other. If something comes to you that you want to say, just go ahead and say it. So the core question for today is, what did you experience in 2020 that's transforming your vision of a just and thriving society in 2021? And Ana, let's start with you again.
Sure. 2020 was definitely a really challenging year in so many aspects. When I was reflecting on this, you know, we talked about this a bit before, but the first thing that really came to mind for me was a sort of death for all of us, in the sense that we had to shed a lot of skin. We had to shed a lot of parts of ourselves that maybe kept us afraid of what was actually happening in the world, or afraid of what the future might hold, afraid of the people around us, and afraid of the harm that a lot of us, especially as Black and Brown folk, experience in situations we're in every day, in our workspaces, in our friend spaces, and having to let go of that and experience our full selves, the fear, the panic, maybe from COVID, from the racial injustices that have compiled up to this point of being able to be seen, especially by white people, But in that same space of death, I think that in 2021, now that we have experienced and we've been able to process in some capacity, we're able to be reborn into 2021. And hopefully we can take that full selves, our full selves with us. I know for me personally, a lot of my experience last year came out in the way that I expressed myself as an artist, as a creator. My experiences from last year threw me almost into a whirlwind of how do I create without others around me in real physical life? How do I, express the things I'm feeling and lean on both sides of my community, especially as someone who's mixed. It was really challenging for me to lean on my Black community. It was because I wanted to be there for them, but it's also challenging to feel sincerity from my white friends and the allies around me. So those experiences definitely led me to create a lot of things, but also to get in touch with myself and to understand that if I can really center myself in the wholeness of who I am, then nothing can really break me and nothing can stop me. And it comes down to that oneness with myself. So that's something that I definitely am trying to bring into 2021 and encourage others to experience as well. I found it through meditation, through therapy, through talking to my family, on both sides of my family. So wholeness is what I'm trying to bring into 2021 and what I envision.
Thank you, Ana. And I just want to tell you that when you say that, it brings me peace and makes me feel whole. So thank you for bringing that.
Of course.
And you use the word fullness, which Naimah had really highlighted in our conversations. Would you like to jump off of that?
Thank you. I sure would. So I think, to directly answer your question, what is it that I experienced in 2020? I was thinking about this question even outside of our conversations. And I think if I had to bullet point list them, I'd say I experienced grief. I experienced required resourcefulness. And I also experienced some sort of internal prompting to choose to thrive despite this reinforced message of inferiority that is often the reality for people of color, Black people specifically, but also in that choice to thrive, I experienced what everybody else experienced, which was this imposed pause, right? This required slow down, stop, think, and sit still, right? Because that's essentially what you had to do when you shelter in place. You have to just be with yourself and maybe the people that live with you. And so I grew to really try to see that as a gift and not a burden. And there were a lot of choices my husband and I had to make. Do we let our children see what is happening to this man, George Floyd, who resembles my father, who looks like their grandfather? Do we let them see that? Do we try to explain, and lots of debate about that. But essentially, we landed in a place where we decided to take the pause, like I said, as a gift. And I think as a result of that, and as a result of seeing so many people around us grieve, not just because of the racial uprising, but also because of the deaths that were happening in our community because of the pandemic, two lessons I think came out of that are really shaping, how I look at 2021, which is, life is a limited appointment. And whether it's the pandemic or police brutality, or we all have an expiration date, and that it would be so very sad to reach that expiration date and not have been my full authentic self. So whereas my word for myself in 2020, my personal theme was to thrive, and that was set before the world flipped upside down. I think I ended 2020 really feeling like that my theme for this year was going to be fullness, responding to everything from a place of, like Ana said, wholeness. And I just met Ana. So like to hear her say those things, I was like, wow, you know, that really spoke to me, because I had already been feeling that my work is not just showing up myself completely and whole and responding to life's challenges from a position of fullness, from a perspective of fullness, and rather than one of emptiness, but it's also creating spaces. And in my world, you know, I am often influencing educational spaces. So creating spaces where other people feel safe and know that they can be full and whole. And that's how I am trying to contribute to, you know, a just and thriving society, because I think a part of our biggest problem is that we are often afraid to be our full selves in every place that we're invited to be. And if we're not afraid, then we're choosing actively to hide or shrink a part of ourselves for the comfort of someone else, whoever that someone else is, whether it's the dominant, you know, group, racial group, whatever. It's turning a little bit apart. It's turning a little bit of ourselves down so that no one else has to feel uncomfortable. But I feel like for this year and after last year, I'm done with that. I'm done with that personally. So I'm doing my very best to be honest with myself and to be a person that holds the door open for others to do the same.
I just want to riff on that for a minute, Naimah. It's your deep, because you know, when you share about the kind of time and intentionality and the pause as you described it for your family, you know, I think that the dominant narrative was, you know, white brothers and sisters were, you know, having yoga classes, and we were, you know, Black and brown people were just, you know, impacted, right? But that, and I think other folks have struggled or felt some guilt if they did find, as Ana said, you know, not just grief, but for, you know, fullness, right? Or, and that I think we need to say out loud that while it was not easy, and it certainly had emotional implications, that for many of us, we also learned, I mean, I don't know if I ever want to go back to the office again. Like, I enjoy being with my baby and having lunch with him every day. We worked hard, but I'm pleased to step off the hamster wheel of grind culture, right? We had to press into our relationships, right? Because it's very different when you just passing each other on the way to work and what have you. But when you got, you know, we had to do some deep work in relationships with our children, with our partners, with our families, with ourselves, right? And I just wanted to appreciate you surfacing that, because, you know, the when the mainstream kind of narrative picks that up, you miss that nuance and complexity of what was happening for all of us. And I fear that, like, I want to get back to normal. Like, do you really? You really want what you were doing before March?
One thing I said at our last planning call that came to me as I was thinking about this session is that my biggest lesson was what you said. The pause made me realize that I was hectically busy, right? That I was losing so much time with the commute, and I was never able to fully think about something, like really bring creativity to it. I am a master planner, logistical executor. So I can do that very easily without a lot of mental capacity. But I realized that busyness truly erodes productivity. And I was like, this, not having to wake up 2 children in the morning and fight with them and get them to my car, only to get to the car and need a nap by the time you sit in the garage. You haven't even like pulled out yet, you know? Like, having that go away meant I showed up to virtual meetings so much more centered, with ideas that I couldn't even fully follow through because I was thinking about alternating the plan to the Ann Arbor Drive because of this traffic. Okay, how am I going to get that kid picked up by a certain time because they got to get to dance? All right, what are we having for dinner? Can I do the shift order? Like, just so many things all at one time. And just the real ability to slow down, I think, was truly a gift. And I'm with you, Yodi. I don't know if that's a normal that I'm ever interested in going back to.
It's funny, both of you saying that, because while you were talking about that, it reminded me of, in the actual moment of that transition, I almost had to like give myself permission to be still. It was like, we're so used to that hamster wheel, just like you called it, that it was so counterintuitive to actually take that time to be home for an entire day or whatnot. It definitely required some permission. So I'm just remembering that now.
Come on, Kim.
And I would add, I love, as Naimah's talking about the kids and all the hamster wheel stuff. And I do think that, there's a lot of things I would do different last year, and we grieved a lot. We lost a lot. And I'm a mom, I have to be very transparent. My daughter graduated from high school. She was the first one of my kids to do that. I didn't get to go pick a prom dress. I didn't get to go to graduation. And I'm gonna be honest, it broke my heart. And she was so resilient. And to watch her taught me that was about me, because, at one point she made the comment, well, at least we didn't buy a dress and waste it. I wish we had went to go buy the dress, because I want the experience to take my daughter to go get a prom dress. And so, and I struggled with that because, lives were lost. We lost family members, but, I'm a mom, and I had to lean into that. But, one thing that I give myself credit for is being grateful. And so early on in the pandemic, one of the things me and my husband talked about a lot was I was so grateful to have that time with my teenagers. And I'm empathetic to my coworkers and people on this call who have smaller children. But I know for me, this is the end of a chapter with teenagers, that they're leaving and they're not going to come back. And so I was very thankful that I had that time that we were together, because I would have not had that. Last year, we would have dropped my daughter off at college and the whole year would have been a blur. And we would have missed 1,000 conversations and dinners and cooking. And, and so for me, that part was a lot easier. I tell people, I live in a house with my favorite people. These are people I love. I'm blessed to have a good marriage. And those things do matter, and being grateful for them and being present. I think for me, the struggle and the tension that I shared with the group was, I was very hopeful with the events and the protests, and it made me so proud that I felt like as an African-American, we were finally being seen. But then it was, why did you never believe us? And so I balanced a lot of hope and cynicism, and I still am. And I'm not a cynic. I'm a very hopeful person, but I struggle with that because when the year ended and we looked at, kind of what did we get out of this, all of this that did happen, Aunt Jemima got changed, Uncle Ben got changed, we got a new section on Comcast, and I'm still waiting for us to have that big moment of change. And for me professionally, I'm still not sure I'm comfortable. And, there's some stuff I got to do, work I have to do with that as a leader, but I'm not sure I'm in safe enough spaces all the time where I can really show up and we can talk about what happened and what needs to change. And I know that's not my job. That's not my place to make it safe, or not alone. I know there's some work I can do on that part, but so for me, and then I have to admit, last week, now we back at, is this hopeful or is this cynicism? And I think as a leader, I just kind of go back and forth with that, personally and professionally. And, as a parent, like Naimah was saying about the kids, I'm day one. Look, let's watch Amistad. You 5, watch Amistad. Look, this is what it is. Because I think that truth has to be married into the brains of everyone in society. And that's why we have a problem. And so,
Kim, you made the babies watch Amistad when they were 5. You break it up a little bit, babe. Hold on, you still a little, I don't want to hear every word you say. I don't want to miss.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Yep. Hear you.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2020 was conflicting for me, you know, and I'm still working through some of that. And I'm gonna be honest, you know, as a leader last week didn't help, you know. So we'll see, you know, we'll see. I think the biggest thing I learned is that I'm not in control, and we have to lean into being flexible and, you know, just and being grateful. You know, the leaning into what's happening is something I know I need to work on, and I think we all could benefit from. We are not in control. You know, we think we do, it's a facade.
Yeah, that surrender is real, isn't it? It's real.
Yeah.
Truly surrendering. Let's keep it flowing, y'all.
I'm gonna add something about the balancing of like hope and cynicism. This question about like how is what you experienced transforming your vision, right, for a just and thriving society. I think that what I experienced has shown me that the work that we really need to do is around perception, perception of another's humanness. The incidents that happened last week made it also put on display on every public network, right? The truth that people are naming it, but the truth that nobody is dealing with, right? Which is when people are rallying for their racial cause, they are perceived as scary, violent, threatening, with the potential to harm. But when they are not wrapped in brown skin and they have, posted intentions of harm, there is still hope that they'll behave. And therefore the response is not as harsh, I guess, for lack of better words. And I think that right there, that subtle but visible difference has to do with perception, has to do with narrative, as I think somebody just put in the chat. And I just think that is, to me, until we can unpack the why behind that, honestly, and come to the table and have that conversation, we are always going to be at this point where we're vacillating between hope and skepticism.
Ana, let's get you in there. How do we survive? How do we thrive in a system that wasn't made for us, that doesn't love us, isn't working for us? How do we do that? How do we do that in 2021 and beyond?
It really resonated with me what you just said, Naimah, about perception, and especially about perception of humanity. I think that a lot of what our attention is drawn to right now comes from a source that doesn't give us much else than almost like the negative aspects of what's happening. There is no, like, especially social media, is what I'm referring to, because that's where we really see what's happening. And that's where we really understand what's happening, and where people are putting themselves out there, whether it's them acting a fool in the Capitol or reacting and expressing how it's making someone feel who's taking in that content. I'm not sure what ways, we can really call our community in to change that perception. I know we talked a little bit about leadership accountability, and that's some of the great work that I want to say, Kim and Naimah, you're both doing in higher education, because I feel like a lot of that change can come in the next generation. And I feel like those people that are growing up now, that are coming into their adulthood now, that's where there's so much potential for perceptions to be shifted and for people to really understand how their actions impact others, how, maybe going along with the flow, or what you see someone else doing, or what you see a group of people doing, even if you look like them, how your perception of the world, how your perception of yourself and others can really influence the people around you, but also the people all across the world, because our media is so vast right now. So that's how I think definitely influencing the young, talking to young people, sharing oral history, sharing, the history of where we live, the history of Detroit, the history of Ann Arbor, and the different ways that people have had to survive, and the ways that we can protect each other and help each other heal from that. So I think leaning on the younger generation and trusting them too. I know it's hard to trust young people sometimes, even me, and I'm pretty young. And I sometimes look at the TikTok generation and I go, uh-oh. But, I really think that trusting them and leaning on them is a really powerful way that we can help influence the future.
I think you make a good point about the young people. And I would, I always tell people, people love to bash other generations. I'm a Gen Xer and, we get ignored. But what I'll say is that, whether they're on TikTok or not, it's their future. And so if we're not listening to young people, we're not plotting, a future. We're not creating a future. So we can agree or not agree or bring our own perception, but we have to listen to young people. And I think that's important. I think the leadership part of it, we have to get to a place where companies, organizations putting in DEI people is not a solution, but leaders who have an understanding and appreciation, as Naimah said, for humanity, and that's part of their role because you're affecting people. I mean, the power, the small power of just being able to hire somebody and fire somebody in any organization is massive, or judges, that's a big one for me. But I think that being able to understand and appreciate everyone's humanity, it's a question, it's an expectation that needs to be put in all of our institutions, in our organizations, in a way that we're going to hold people accountable. It's fine for me for people to be unemployed who cannot do that, because that small write-up you give someone or hiring you do or don't do, that's power, and we need to make sure that we're not a party to that, that there is expectation. If I've been in interviews where people can't even answer a question about diversity without stuttering. And I mean, diversity is a low bar. I can't hire you. You know what I'm saying? And that's an expectation of me and any other leader. And I think that we really have to get beyond this DEI person Band-Aid. And it's everyone's responsibility, because there's so much power in being just in a supervision role, let alone a leader role, as it relates to impacting and affecting other people and their families. And so, I think we have to listen to young people. And I think young people are looking at us, expecting us to have a core that's about equity and inclusion. And if it's not, we got to do better. And I'm gonna be blunt, it might be time for people to retire or go get a farm or do something else. But we need to get people out of organizations who cannot lead from a point that's inclusive.
Not a farm, Kim, not a farm. They got to get a farm.
I don't know, a farm.
But I want to latch onto that for a moment, because it's almost like an invitation or a demand. And I had an experience, we do a lot of racial equity and anti-racism work. And today I was talking with a prospective client, and something came over me, and I said to leaders of the organization, what personal work have you done around anti-racism, right? Not just, can I come in and do something with you? What have you done? And I'm so grateful that I asked that question, because it took the conversation, like, your people will not even buy in or believe you if you are not yourself, right? Transforming the way you're looking at the work, right? Like, if we're really talking about transformation and vision here, it sounded like you were inviting leaders to really examine themselves and to make a commitment to anti-racism work personally, right? And then it was ironic that you mentioned that, because the person who I was talking to described going all the way out to another state for an interview, and they asked, tell us about your commitment to DEI as a leader. And they flew their tail right back home because they couldn't answer that question. Yeah. Let's move forward, y'all. This is powerful, though. I want our guests to hold, or our guests to hold that, what has been your personal journey around anti-racism, and how are you going to model that, not just burden one person or one department, right? And I'm noticing that folks, it's almost like they missed the message. I noticed, like, another client told me today, they promoted the Black woman to lead talent development and DEI. I'm like, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. That wasn't the point.
Naimah, I saw you come off mute there.
It's okay. I was going to say something, but the conversation has gone in a different direction. So we can go in wherever you want to go, Dee.
What were you going to say? Leadership. We were talking about leadership.
We were talking about too, listening to young people. And I was just going to name that, one of the hats that I proudly wear is that of executive director at 826 Michigan. It's a writing and publishing organization. And our work is really around centering young people's thoughts, perceptions, experiences, etc. And they just ask such powerful questions and sometimes they're simple and profound. And it's like, you are so right. Like, I feel like we need to have youth councils as a part of arms of government, because sometimes we're making these decisions that impact groups of people who are not being represented, right? And I think that a lot of times our young people, they may not speak about the things that they're seeing, but they see everything, and they ask and they ask questions that challenge us in ways that sometimes we're unwilling to challenge ourselves. And so I just wanted to agree
Let's
with
talk
that.
about that though. Like, what would it be like to, what would it take to create a world where not just our children, you, Kim, Ana, feel fully seen?
I do think, Deej, you made a great point. I think other people have to do some work. Other people have to, they have to contribute. And again, you're not being seen when someone's saying, asking one of us, hey, can you be on this committee or lead this project? I think they have to do the work, because I think we all know when we were in safe spaces, we've been in this skin long enough to know. And so I think it's a shared thing. And I'm not giving up my onus on my role in that. But I think I think people need to know that other people doing the work. It's just like with any relationship. Only one who's doing the work, you feel it. And I think that's what will make more spaces safer for everybody to be their full self and for us to all be better.
Ana, how about you?
I think that, like Kim said, it's actually doing the work before asking us to come into some of these positions and do these things. I think that feeling seen as a biracial person is really a different experience. I think that it's obviously a much smaller population, but it's growing and it's going to keep growing. And our experiences are so important, but it's hard for them to feel validated. I think it's because we observe and we feel the pain of I feel the pain of my Black ancestors, my mother being Black, my mother's experiences, and my father's family, very different, like so different. And so coming then into the world, especially the world we're in right now, and feeling seen in the community at large has been a real journey for me. I think that, like you said, focusing on what we can each individually do helps us maybe to recognize others who are able to see us as well, right? Like when we're actually able to see, and we all have different barriers to what that means, but then we can become closer to other people who understand those experiences, or who understand that they'll never have those experiences, but know how to communicate and how to develop relationships. So I think that's one way for sure. I don't know, I'd have to sit with that question a little bit more, because it really is just making me think a lot. And I feel, I feel like that's a really great question.
I think I'm thinking about two situations. One is 826 published a book this summer because no one else could. It's a photo, oh goodness. The book features high school students from Ypsilanti who are sharing their world through pictures and through their stories. And one of the students, young authors, her quote that we used a lot in the summer was that it's like they seen me, but not the real me. And so that's just an excerpt from her story. And we use that a lot because that's what's happening all the time. That's what's coloring people's perception. You see me, but not the me, right? And I'm also thinking about a situation because I also wear another hat as a faculty consultant in higher education. And I talk with faculty members about creating safe, equitable, nurturing classroom spaces, virtually or in person. And there was a situation where a student came to this professor and said, "This is a hard year. You have us reading this book and it is racially offensive. I am already a person that is dealing with a lot of anxiety and some mental health challenges, and I cannot do this book." And what I realized what happened, and I'm looking back on that situation, is that the faculty member saw the student, asked for help, came to some consultants and asked for some help. But the missing piece is that the faculty member, I think, did not see the real heart of the student. And I think that what it would look like, Yodi, is just coming to the table with people. Like, and when I say that, I mean literally and figuratively, like envisioning ourselves able to sit at a table, a dinner table, a coffee table, just with people who are different from ourselves and hear them and listen to what their heart is saying. And I think that that is how you get welcomed into other people's world, is by creating a space where they can share their truth and work together on a solution. Head on, like without going to a third party to come in and intervene and, human to human, like talk to me about what you need.
I completely agree with that. I feel like everything I was trying to say, you encapsulated it perfectly in both of those stories or you just shared. But it reminded me of one of the exercises we did in Champions for Change, where we were actively listening to each other. And we were listening in a way that is very different than how we normally listen, which is listening to respond and not listening to actually hear what people are saying. And in the same way, I feel like today, with everything we've experienced in the past year and whatnot, a lot of people are trying to see everybody, to understand their experiences are different, but they're not necessarily seeing all the way through. And I think that is definitely a great way to start, is by looking past maybe that surface thing, or and maybe, for certain people that surface thing is, you're a white person and you're talking to a Black group of people or a Black person, and you see our Blackness, and so you maybe use different words or say different things or try to be extra careful or try to talk about how much work you're doing, instead of actually seeing through and realizing you can just talk to me as a human. It doesn't necessarily, and then so many opportunities open up for us to really build the community we want. So thank you for elaborating so much better on that, Naimah, because those words that you said definitely hit it on the head.
We need to move forward, but I know Ananya has a follow-up question to you, Ana, but you made me this idea of humanity and humanizing. And something I've been thinking about in terms of last week was, collective trauma. And we frequently talk about in DEI the experience of the enslaved person and their ancestry, us, right? Their lineage, us, and the way post-traumatic slave disorder is embodied, right, for so many of us, and that trauma. And we rarely talk about the embodiment of the colonizers' descendants, of dehumanization, of what it means to be 3 or 4 generations of having that in your blood, right? And so my invitation here, and I'll keep it brief, is that we not see this work as helping folks of color, but healing all of us from the harm of white supremacy, from the harm of dehumanization, from the harm of the trauma that comes as a result of the legacy of that in this country. That is what we are collectively healing.
Thank you for that, Yodit. And Ana, when you mentioned finding new ways of listening, I wanted to appreciate Lori Saginaw, who's in the audience, and what she has brought to Champions for Change. And I think the final offering in the form of the question that we wanted to make to you, it comes back to what you had described, Ana, at the beginning about this past year being a kind of death, and then imagining this coming year as a rebirth. And the question is just, what does rebirth look like? And maybe, Kimberly, if you have something to share on that.
You know, I think one of the things that I share with the group is I think the rebirth really is, you know, and you asked the questions about what we would, what we really lean into. And I think that it really is, I think, kind of going back to the foundation, you know, the institutions and organizations that we know are positive and exist for a reason. And so for me, it's been really kind of given more appreciation to those organizations and those things in my life, to use those kind of as a stepping stool, to use those in their in their purpose. You know, one of the things I shared when we were talking is that, you know, last week was hard in a lot of different ways to watch on Wednesday, but it also overshadowed a beautiful thing that happened on Tuesday in Georgia. And, you know, I really loved as a leader to be inspired by how it happened and the people on the ground and the institutions and the organizations that did that. And I think we forget about the beauty in that. You know, many of us, like for me, you know, you get degrees and you go to school and you do these things and you're like, oh, the church, this, and but those institutions matter historically for a reason. The sororities, the fraternities, the links, and they're ours, and they're ours. And we have to uplift them. We have to lean on them. We have to respect them. And they are safe spaces. So when I think about this past year and even this year coming, for me, the rebirth is really, there's going to be places that I need to disrupt and make safe for more people. But there's me going to the places I know that are safe for me. My home, my church, my sorority, you know, the institutions that have always been there. We have to not let them go away, and we have to lean into those, you know. And I think that, you know, from a cultural standpoint, comparatively, when you look at different cultures that thrive in this country, that is what they do. They don't turn their backs on them. They don't criticize them, and, you know, and they donate to them. And so for me, I think that's been kind of where I see me pulling away from the cynicism and really seeing the hope, is that, you know, we created institutions in this country for a reason, and they all served a great purpose, because we wouldn't be here where we're at right now if they didn't exist. But we got to lean into them. We don't need to make new ones. We need to lean into the ones we have and make them right and strong. And those are safe spaces. I think even just for us recognizing that safe spaces do exist, and sometimes that might just be where we need to be. You know, and especially for our kids, that's always a big thing for me, for young people, you know, what those safe spaces are. So for me, I think that's a rebirth. That part of it, you know, is we had to think about what was most important and what mattered. And again, I'm one of those people. Tuesday was like, that was the best thing. Oh, that was just so awesome to see, to watch, to understand why and how, and, you know, to see the people doing it the way that we do things to get that result is important. And it's all of our history, you know, not just African-American history. It is the history of this country. And we have to embrace that and recognize that. So for me, that's a big rebirth.
That's so beautiful. Kimberly, thank you. Thank you. Naimah, what does rebirth look like?
I think I'm going to take a more selfish, a selfish approach to this. To me, rebirth is holding on tighter to some of the newly arranged priorities that I made, in 2020, which include like being very selfish and demanding about self-care so that I can pour from a cup that has something in it. My goal isn't even a full cup. I just would like to just to not be completely empty trying to serve everybody else's needs. I may have had you guys laughing, but one of the things I said a couple days ago to Yodit and Ananya was like, I'm committed to using meetings that I'm invited to that I am not leading. I will be walking on those calls. Like, these are things that I have to just be pushy, and I don't care what you think about it, because otherwise this is me. I forget about the COVID-19 pounds. Like, otherwise, if I don't take some action, because the to-do list is still there, if not more so, working from home, I have to protect myself. And I am trying to take small steps, small actions to do that. So when I think about the word birth, I'm like you, Yodit, I always go to my own experience of like laboring children. And I always remember that when something is birthed, it goes through these phases where at first it's very needy, right? And then it starts to grow in independence as time goes along. So, prioritizing self-care, focusing in on family time. Like, I might mess it up from time to time. Giving my staff space to feel the feelings that they might be dealing with because the world around us is crazy. And like, letting go of some of these very perfectionistic tendencies that I've been raised with, because I come from business school and think like, this is how you're supposed to run your company. This is what you're supposed to do in a meeting. Like, no, I mean, just trying to bring some humanity into the places and spaces, my spheres of influence where I am at the table. I'm just trying to bring a little bit more of the humanity that I mentioned earlier into those spaces. And what I'm trying to say, but it's coming out all jumbled, is that like, even those intentions I might not get right all the time, because when something is new and it's birthed for the first time in my life, then, I might stumble and fall and forget about it. But I'm just really trying to be intentional about coming back to things that I know will help to bring out the best in other people, and also make space in my heart and in my head to hear people that I don't necessarily agree with or feel safe around, but give them an opportunity to be themselves also.
Somebody is not on mute. Can you check real quick, please? Ananya, I'm excited. I actually learned this process from Naimah of doing a community ode. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yodit, actually, could we hear from Ana and then shift into demands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just gonna say one quick thing, but yeah, that my idea of rebirth, I think, for me, is definitely setting more boundaries in my relationships. I feel like oftentimes I overextend myself in a lot of my relationships, maybe being over trusting of people, or just not really being solid in my own intentions and what I need out of my relationships, especially when it comes to the support that I get from people. And then also, I haven't had any babies at all, but the idea of nurturing after, rebirthing, but making sure we nurture ourselves and nurture each other and the people that are in our support system, and leaning on that a lot more, because I think rebirthing is very difficult or more difficult as death. So yes, so thank you.
And Naimah, you had used this beautiful phrase a few days ago that you didn't use the same words today, so I wanted to reflect them back. You said that you are learning to mother, you're mothering yourself this year. And that is so powerful.
Nothing to add. It's just a journey.
So we're going to shift into a final little wrap-up prompt for this conversation, which is to invite each of you, Ana, Naimah, and Kimberly, to share any demands or invitations that you have for how we as a community can really center racial justice now and into the future. So I just want to give each of you an opportunity to speak to that. Naimah, would you like to start?
Oh, that's totally fine.
Okay. Any demands or invitations?
Yeah, and I hear someone. If you could check if you're muted, you're not speaking.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Any demands or any invitations that I would like to make of the community okay, yes, how to center racial justice. I would just like to ask community members, especially those who are in leadership positions, to, when you are setting strategy, making plans, that you just ask the direct question: have we looked at this from a racial lens? It's a hard question to surface, but I think that we think a lot about fiscal responsibility. We think about capacity. We think about program strategy and all of these logistical things that, you know, have to do with our work centers or the areas that we are influencing. But I just think it's very easy to think that because you have this mission, or because you are where you're located, you are inclusive and considerate and all these things. But I think that we need to ask the question pointedly at decision-making points. Like, have we looked at this from a racial equity lens? And maybe the question is, what aspects of the racial equity lens have not been considered yet? I keep the ask short and sweet and simple because the work is so deep and multi-layered, but I think that is the start of a really good conversation, especially for people who are in positions of power, who can make decisions, who can dispense resources, who can make things available to members of the community, to be thinking about it. And racial justice doesn't only mean Black. It also means, you know, other colors and hues and ethnicities and stories that are coming into our world. And so we have to think about it from multiple aspects to make sure that we are directly addressing, naming the thing that we want to make change in.
Thank you, Naimah. How about Kimberly?
You know, I think I'm going to just go double down on my last comment, which is about the institutions and the organizations. I think that, you know, of all of us, you know, supporting institutions, cultural institutions in communities financially, with our time, our energy, and not questioning them, I think is extremely important, because I think that some of the solutions is going to end up being people being in places that are safe for them, with people who might look like them and can support them in the way they need to be supported. And I think for us, you know, people of color, I think it's important for us to not turn our backs to that and not allow those institutions to be questioned. I think it's so beautiful this year that we're seeing people's strength came from strong institutions, like historically Black colleges and universities, and the systems and things that we created when we needed them, we still need them. And there's many cultures that have never turned away from that. And we need to keep that. We need to uplift it. We need to support it financially. And that is part of the solution as much as having a DEI officer. Those things need to be supported. Those community organizations need to be supported when they're doing the work on the ground for the people and they know how to do it. I think that's extremely important.
I think that my ask and invitation for the community is a little more personally oriented. And I would say that is to really ask yourself and each other to how we can be better allies. And I don't mean that in terms of just the Black community. I mean that in terms of how can we be allies for each other, for humanity, because at the end of the day, it comes down to, like we said before, being able to see each other and being able to listen to each other. And that's whether you've known someone for a second or for 10 years, how can we really show up for ourselves first and do the work and challenge ourselves and not be afraid to ask ourselves why that feeling came up or why we're afraid, or ask those deep questions and in turn be able to show up for others and be a strong ally.
Thank you so much, Ana. So I think right now we're going to shift into a really powerful exercise. And Yodit, I don't know if you are there. There you are.
I'm here. I'm just trying to eat my salad, girl, and not be chewing on the screen. Yes, dear, I'm here.
Yeah, so we're ready to move into the exercise. Would you like to introduce it?
We're gonna do it now. Yeah, I would love. I wonder if Naimah will back me up if I get this wrong, but my dear friend Julie Quiros, today is the new moon. Happy new moon. And yesterday she sent this blog and she said that she'd wrote about poetry, that it's about seeing, naming, and valuing our tingles of intuition, our dreams, magic, grief, and joy, our journeys of healing, sovereignty, and transformation, our truth, vision, and power. Poetry, she said, is the practice of seeing, naming, and valuing what oppression and violence have taught us to ignore. So as we embark on this kind of ode that we want to write together, and again, I want to acknowledge Naimah for teaching me this practice. Ananya is going to share a prompt as you're reflecting on Julie's words and on this session. If we know that poetry, words, rest, noticing, as we did today, are tools of liberation, then what is the thing you need to write and speak into this moment to make that real? This is a time where we get to manifest and vagifest what the future looks like. So Ananya, will you please share the screen with those prompts?
Yeah, and as I'm doing that, I'll invite all of you who are here to just, in your space, if you can find a pencil and something to write with, just a scrap of paper, or it can be a device, but something where you'll be able to write down a few words or a phrase. So I'll give you all a moment to do that.
Can we make the Google Doc?
Yeah.
You want me to do it?
Maybe that would be good.
Let's do it.
Okay. Okay. So the way this will work is that we have these prompts on the screen, and these are really an invitation for you to pick one or maybe two that are resonating with you right now. And then we'll invite you to really, in these next couple minutes, create a space for yourself where you feel really at ease. So maybe for me, that would mean turning off my video and just getting really comfortable and taking a moment to look at these prompts. And whichever one or two speak to you, to just complete the sentence, or if none of them speak to you, write whatever is coming to you in this moment. And then we'll ask you to just, whenever you're ready, to drop your phrase or words in the chat. And then what we'll do, what Yodit is going to help us do, is collect all of your phrases into a collective document, and then we will share that back with you after this session. So again, if you take a moment to take in some of these prompts on your screen and pick one or two that you would like to respond to, and then write a phrase or a sentence.
Or answer the prompt, yep. They can type it in chat if they don't have pen or paper nearby. I also put the Google Doc in. You can scratch it out if you're a writer, but we do want to collect them. That's the goal, is a community vision together.
Yeah. So whenever you're ready, you can drop that in the chat.
Ananya, if you want to switch to the Google Doc and put that up, then we can see that kind of happening.
Sure.
If you on the chat, it'll come up for you. Ooh. There. Ooh. Freedom feels like breathing without looking over my shoulder. Yes. Thank you, Candace. I'm going to drop this in the doc for you. Folks are writing, my tingles of intuition tell me that more of us are ready to come to the table of humanity than those who are afraid. Wow. Oppression, nurturing myself looks like listening when my body asks for rest. There y'all go. Rebirth feels like a deep breath. Yeah. When I imagine a just and thriving society, everyone has enough. And by everyone believing in enough, we trust and care for one another. Safety for all, from physical and emotional harm, safe spaces to live, recreate and learn, safe and healthy food and water. Come through, y'all. Rebirth looks like pain and unimaginable joy, expansion and light, amaryllis, people believing, trusting each other. My tingles of intuition tell me that great sacrifice will be required. Oppression has taught us to ignore ourselves, to stop listening to what our bodies are really saying and need. When I see you, I wonder, where have you been today? When you see me, I feel stronger and deeper. When we're liberated, I imagine that we all work to foster belonging of everyone in the room, the organization, the world. When we are liberated, I imagine laughter and noise, freedom for people to take up space, a bigger light and heart in the world. When you see me, I feel accepted and cared for. Freedom feels like harmony, peace, balance. Rebirth looks like unlearning separately and then growing into new learning together. Yes. Yeah. In my dreams, I see us learning, and playing together with joy. Yes, for play. This is just beautiful. When I see you, I wonder if you know that you are powerful and bring a gift to the world. When I see you, I wonder, where does it hurt? Do I see you completely? When I see you, I wonder why you treat me so differently. When you see me, I feel acknowledged in my humanity and curious. Beloved community feels like mutuality. Rebirth like a deep breath. When I see you, I wonder what pain of yours will you allow to soothe? Mm. In my dreams, I see brown boys being understood as curious and capable instead of a disposable threat. Oh yeah, beautiful. Let it come up and flow. We are the architects of our future. In the chat, we got some good stuff. Oh my goodness. We're gonna be copy and paste for a minute, Andanya. I love it. Oh, Desiree, look, all my friends are here. Rebirth looks like an end to poverty. Freedom feels like I wish that I knew what it is to be free. Freedom would feel like a clean wind that hasn't blown for centuries now on the soft face, this Mother Earth. Thank you, Sophie. Oppression has taught us to disregard our feelings and emotions and smile, although our heart cries in anger or sadness or in just being ignored. Nurturing each other looks like offering love, compassion, and empathy for healing. Rebirth feels like releasing an impoverished mind to embrace the abundance of heart wisdom. Yes, Janae. When you see me, I feel I can ask for support without shame and can share love without boundaries. Thanks, Ed. Jeffrey said a just and thriving society looks different than what we see now, but I need to learn to see just how different. Ana, rebirth looks like all of myself showing up unapologetically without having to choose a side, just being me. Yes, baby, yes. Oppression has taught us to stand strong and fight in a different manner. That's right. Oh, Jamal is here. Freedom feels like one America, not the two Americas we live in now. Alicia, freedom feels like not having to worry about my sons growing up. Tasha, freedom feels like living without worries, living without peace, love, happiness, understanding, enjoyment. Yes. Lana says, rebirth looks like continuing to intentionally support institutions that are safe spaces. Najma, oppression has taught us to ignore our true feelings and identity. It has taught us to only speak what they want to hear from us. Oppression has taught us to fight against each other. Aaron says, rebirth looks like bringing all I have had to hide in the shadows to survive, light upon more light. Kasha, nurturing each other looks like letting go of barriers that block us from truly listening. Barriers can manifest as defense, resistance, shame. Pam, this is one of the most beautiful and hopeful exercises. Yes, yes. Freedom looks like diminishing room within myself for the things that have abused me to make room for me to find my way back. Ooh, Janae, you bring me to tears, to my power. When you see me, I feel like you don't see me. Beloved community feels like togetherness, helping and working with one another. Rebirth looks like being connected to the earth in deep and historic ways that do not depend on money. In my dreams, I see clean, healing, nourishing water, wondrously old and valued forest, and a black velvet sky at night with a true view of the blessings of the stars. Oppression has taught us to ignore our own life. Beloved community feels like my people, my crew, a sense of love and belonging, of being cherished and of cherishing.
Lana says, nurturing myself looks like me feeling relaxed enough to be my authentic self. John says, when I see you, I want to go beyond my fear to really know you. Alicia says, in my dreams, I see a happy, healthy, loving community. Desiree says, nurturing each other looks like hearing our collective needs, even if not a personal need, because we are all connected and are all responsible for our shared liberation. Eileen says, hearing this from you all, beloved community, feels like what we are here. That feels like a really beautiful place to transition. Wow. Thank you for engaging so deeply with us. And thank you especially to Ana, Naimah, and Kimberly for guiding us into this space today. And really, Naimah, I don't know if we highlighted this enough. Yodit and I were both so moved when you introduced us to this exercise. So thank you especially for that.
I would just say it is not an original strategy. And I will say thank you on behalf of the 826 Michigan team, because it is something that our staff, that they bring into classrooms, that they do with students as a way to curate in the same way that you experience their thinking, their feelings about a particular topic. So shout out to that team who's been doing that writing-based education for a long time, and it just felt like the right thing to do this summer.
Thank you. So I'm going to put our usual request for your feedback on this session in the chat, and we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to share your experience of this session. And then in these last 4 minutes, we'll invite you just to stick around if you'd like to, if you want to be here and just be present together in however you're holding your experience. And please do use your voices if there's something you'd like to say. We welcome that. And if not, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.